I have a reminder to myself to push record, so I'm going to do that. This presentation will be recorded and posted on the website for later use, as for those who couldn't join us right now at this time. So thanks again for joining us. I'm Jennifer Reeder. I am the National President-elect for Phi U, and what that means, one of the responsibilities I have is managing the professional projects. It's a really fun job that I enjoy, and this is my second time around of doing the professional projects, and so I'm excited to be able to do this webinar to help answer questions and prepare you for preparing the report. We also have Melissa. She is the National Executive Director for Phi U. So Melissa, if you have any interjections or comments as we go, please feel free to interrupt and say, you forgot about this, or don't forget to mention this. And as I said, if you have questions as we go, please feel free. It's pretty laid back and casual. Also, for my sake, if I move back, I've learned this in doing lectures over time. If I move back, it gets really quiet. And so if you can't hear me, or if you can't see the screen, I try to be thinking about those things, but please let me know if I need to make any adjustments. Just a little about me so you know my background. I'm at Idaho State University, and my background is in nutrition. I'm a dietitian, but I'm also in higher ed. And so I'm going to school right now, getting a degree in educational leadership. So I'm a student like many of you, and I have worked with doing professional projects in my own chapter as a collegiate member, and then I really enjoy this aspect of it too. So to start our discussion about professional projects, I'm going to share my screen. And let me see. So I'm going to be looking up because I have a screen above me as well. So it'll look like I'm looking over your heads because I literally am. But I think you can still see the video as we go. So I am starting out at the Phi U website, and I'm going to walk through the process of actually getting to the documents that we need to use to help with that. So let me see here. Okay, so we go into, and if, can everyone see the Phi U website screen? If not, please interrupt. So we're gonna go here. This is the landing page for Phi U's website, and the login section is where we're going to find a lot of the documents that we need. So we'll hit the login, and we see this resource center, and all of the resources for collegiate officers are in the Collegiate Chapter Officers login section. So if we click on this link, we see the login area, and I've already entered the password, so it saved it for me and remembered that. But the password is college 10, so it'll bring you to a little box that says what's it's password protected to be able to access this page that I'm at right now. So college 10, lowercase letters, is the password for accessing this collegiate section. We're going to go into the fall packet of resources for collegiate chapter officers. This is updated every year, and current information with all of the new deadlines and dates are there. So I'm going to spend a minute after we're done kind of reviewing some of the important website places to go and notables and noteworthies, I guess you could say. And also reminders of some deadlines after we finish all the professional project information. So we are most interested in the Vice President's resources because that's the function of the Vice President is to manage the professional projects. So I want to first point out the main resources section, because this is where I recommend that you start. I get a lot of questions from chapters saying, you know, what is a professional project? And is it the same thing as a service project? What does it mean? How do we even go about it to get an understanding of what it is? So this document, I'm going to click on that and open. It's a Word document, and hold on while I bring this over. I don't know if many of you use Zoom on the managing Zoom side, but it's definitely an art and a skill that I'm learning the more and more that I use it. Okay. So this is the document as it comes up. And so professional project tips for the national president-elect. It talks about what is a professional project and how it's different from a service project. It definitely can include service, and most of them do, because that's one of our purposes of Phi U. Service is very important, and it's one thing that we highly value. But it goes beyond a service project. And I like this last paragraph, or the last sentence of the first paragraph. It provides members with the opportunity to enhance their leadership skills and encourages commitment to the field of family and consumer sciences by helping them employ their professional knowledge and service. So it's about being leaders in our field in family and consumer sciences to share the skills and knowledge that we've learned in our different areas, and also providing service. So this goes on to describe the report. It's due by April 1st every year. That deadline has been the same for, I don't know how long, but a long time. And there are 4 different awards that are given. We'll go over how those are evaluated, but essentially there are 4 national awards that can come from any region. And then there are also region awards. There are monetary prizes for those awards. And so that's an added benefit for chapters. But I think the biggest benefit is the learning experiences and the growth and character building for chapters. I love reading about those experiences for chapters. Some of the tips, if we look at the second page of this document, start early, putting yourself on a calendar, as with any of the activities we do for our chapters throughout the year. Some chapters have done professional projects that are mini multiple events in one, so it doesn't have to be just one big event, which kind of helps make it a little bit more manageable for if it's feeling overwhelming. Choose something that relates to the national theme. So I put an image of our current professional project theme, which is Our Light Shines Brighter Together in Service and Leadership. And there's the logo for that, and you can find our logo, the theme in different areas of the website too, but I put it there as another reminder. So this also guides you to the 2 other documents that we're going to spend some time in: the guide for writing the professional project report, and also the professional project rubric. This tells you they can be located under the Vice President's resources with the password college10. There it is again. But those will be the most helpful resources and tools for you to use as you're planning your project, but especially writing the report. Following the instructions is a big deal. When we get down to those between the 1st, 2nd, 3rd place, 4th place national awards, the points are so close. And so the little details are what makes a difference. And I hear that, and I've heard that for years from the other president-elects who've been doing the same process. When you are, sorry, I see there's a chat. I will get to that in just a second. Make sure to follow all the instructions, because again, it's those details. When you submit your final report, some of those small details at the end that made a difference among reviewers were the evidence of planning, preparation, and events. And so pictures or other types of documentation to show your organization and planning and preparation skills, but also the impact on the community and your chapter that should be included. But some of those resources might not be available before the April 1st deadline if you're tracking outcomes or other things. So you can just submit a report that has proposed planned outcomes. But as always, if you have questions, I'm happy, and I answer emails from chapters throughout the year. So there's my contact information, my email address to be able to get in touch with me for questions. So let me go to the chat because I saw that there was a question or a comment. Okay. Our light shines brighter together in service and leadership is the current theme. Thank you, Melissa. Okay. I'm going to go back now. And go back to the website. So we're still in the login section, Vice President's resources, and the other resource that's there in Vice President is the call for undergraduate research, which I will circle back to when the professional projects discussion is done. The other drop-down option is professional projects. So this is where you will find those other two documents that I was talking about, plus some additional resources. So here's the guide for writing the professional project report. We'll come back to that. This is the Professional Project Award recipients from 2019. I'm going to open that. This shows the titles of the projects that won the national awards last year, and then here are the regional awards. So that is was distributed throughout social media, and it's available on the website in case you want to get an idea of maybe the titles from some of the other ones. And I think it looks really nice. I like how our communication specialist is so good at creating those kinds of images for us. The other thing I like about this section of the website that's very helpful is the these first, second, third, and fourth place resources that, from the 2017 projects that won. So if you, we get a lot of requests for, you know, can we see what other chapters have done for their projects to kind of give us a sense of what's out there and what's being done. So these are posted for informational purposes only. You know, it's not a template for you to say, oh, I'm going to do that exact same project and write it the same way too, but it's kind of a guide. So you can see the what a first place winning project looks like. So this is from Epsilon chapter, Montana State University. And Sandy Osborne, who is our current Region 4 counselor, is the advisor at that chapter. And Montana State, the Epsilon chapter, has produced a lot of successful professional projects. So this is a good place to start as what is a best practice for doing the report. So you can see how they've organized it into the different sections. They did a really good job this last year in all the areas for the rubric. So this is a good place to start, but you can see some examples of the documentation they provided. as support for their project. So I wanted to make sure to point out that those 4 projects are there, which is very helpful. So the 2 documents then that I want to focus on the most are Guide for Writing Professional Project Report, and then the Professional Project Rubric. The rubric is really important because that's what the committee uses to grade and score all of the projects. So we'll start here with the guide. I recognize that when chapters are submitting their reports, it's evident that this tool, this guide, has been followed, and the ones who really take it to heart and follow all the steps are the ones that are doing a good job on their reports. I've heard other chapter members, you know, when they're asking questions through email, like, oh, I didn't know that was there. So I'm happy to point out that's kind of a how-to guide. So again, this describes the difference between a professional project, kind of saying what it is and how to design it. The same kind of information that was in that first paragraph of the tips from the president-elect. One question that's asked often about professional projects is, can we use a class activity that's a required activity as our professional project? And this is supposed to be something that is not part of a class, but it's a Phi U chapter activity. So that's noted there in that first paragraph. But again, we want to highlight our purposes and the things that we value as an honor society. So academic excellence, leadership, and service in a way to highlight our FCS skills. Okay, sorry, I can see there's a question I want to make sure to. Oh, reminder from Melissa, thank you. Make sure that, this is a really good point. Thank you for pointing that out. Make sure your chapter is accessing the latest and most updated guide for writing the professional project report that's available on the website. And this was updated for this year, for this cycle. One piece that I noticed, which is why I updated it, is that chapters were following an older version of the guide, which didn't specify, make sure to include the cover sheet. And so they would leave that part out and they would miss out on, I think it's a few points, but it was enough of a difference to put them behind another chapter. So it's those small details. So I tried to make sure to write the report guide, the guide for writing the professional project report, to match up with the rubric as much as possible. But like Melissa said, any documents that you're accessing, just or that you're using as a guide, make sure that they're the current ones from the website. So if we go through the nuts and bolts of the guide, it really does follow the rubric. And I'll pull up the rubric when after kind of going through this to show you how well it fits. So it actually, I'm going to pull it up right now because I think it would be helpful just to show as a preview. And again, thank you for your patience with me as I'm managing Zoom here. Okay. So if I'm doing this correctly, you should be able to see the professional project rubric Word document right now. If not, somebody verbally tell me so I can make sure I'm on the right page. But otherwise, I'm going to keep talking, assuming that you can see. So this is the rubric. And like I said, this is the actual form that committee members use to grade the projects. So here it is. The required components are kind of the parts of your project that need to be included. And when I go back to the guide here in just a minute, you'll see how they all match up. Then there is a piece, I don't think this is in the guide, but there are 9 points built into the overall score. That's the overall assessment of the project. And so that's kind of a subjective piece right there based on the part of the evaluator. Then there's a section that talks about the outline and how you designed your report and organized it. So it tells you what sections to put everything in and what to say in each section, going from introduction to description to interpretation to evaluation. And then there is a component of editorial aspect as far as how well did you write, how well was it organized, did the mechanics, was it free of grammatical errors, did you follow the instructions, and what kinds of supporting documentation did you provide? And that was the pictures and maybe some kind of marketing plan that you might have done that we looked at briefly for Epsilon's chapter. And then I'll come back to the rubric again after we review the guide a little bit more, but I wanted to make sure to point out this last page that's kind of sort of a mini resource section for you in the rubric. So I'm going to go back to the guide. Make sure make sure I'm on the right screen. Okay, so Rubric Part One, required components, that follows the same title as what we just saw in the rubric. And so every section, A, B, C, D, E, matches the rubric. So the cover sheet is the first thing that needs to be included as part of the report. And there is an actual document that you fill out. It's not included in the total page count. So as we'll see in the somewhere later here, the total page count is 20 pages, but that does not include the cover sheet or the title page. And it says that in both of these sections, it is not included in the total page count. So it's from, you know, the description of your project and everything, that's included in the 20-page count, but not the title page or cover sheet. And that was a question that I got quite a bit, and other people had seen the same feedback. So at this point, I'm going to go, because I want to show you where to find that cover sheet. Back to the website, same professional projects section of the Vice President's resources, we see professional project cover sheet form. And I probably have about four versions of this open on my computer right now, so we should be able to see it at least once. So this is the cover sheet. It needs to be filled out. This is the piece that many chapters would forget, and they miss, I think it's 3 points for not including that, but it's a form to fill in. You can, and Melissa, you can, if I'm saying this incorrectly, but where it's a type enter text here, you can type the name of the vice president and type the name of the advisor rather than having an actual signature. Usually they'll do like a signature and then scan it and upload it. But it looks like that is an option to just type it, and that will be acceptable to not have the literal signatures. There's a photo release statement here, and that tells or gives permission that any pictures that you share as part of your documentation, that we can use those and share on the website, or as with the 4 examples on the website, that those are available for other people to see. So that's the permission there. And you're indicating which chapter it is. So use this form. This will be the first page, this cover sheet. And need to go back to the guide. So fill it out, include it, but it's not part of the total page count. The next thing you'll do is a title page. And as we saw for epsilons, it just has the title of the professional project. And so that's whatever your chapter decides that they want to use for the title for their project. And it will say chapter name, college, university, and region. It's centered, and it's its own individual page, just like title pages would be in other reports that you're writing. So one of the next pieces that's evaluated is that the title itself. So this is an opportunity for you as a chapter to choose something that defines your project itself, but also maybe how it relates to the theme. So whatever the title is, clearly represent your project and be an accurate representation of the content. So it does help to go back and forth between the rubric and here. So I'm going to go back to that section. You'll see professional project title accurately reflects project content. That would be, you get all 3 points for that. This rubric is important as you're going through and saying, okay, did I meet the guidelines? How well? Do I think it accurately reflects that? Or does it moderately reflect that or slightly reflect that? This kind of gives you more details, the rubric, about how much detail you might need to provide. So you'll see that's worth 3 points, just the title, out of your total overall rubric score. Okay, so going back to the professional, the guide, we've got presentation of the report. The report is a presentation of the activities, and it describes leadership, service, and scholarship, how you incorporated those things into your project. So it's a professional report. It's not a scrapbook, which is, we love to see the pictures and video, not videos, but multimedia type representations, but also keep in mind it's a professional report. So it will be a good way for you to communicate what you did in a professional way, but also highlight the activities of your chapter. You will provide an abstract. This was another piece that some chapters left out, but it's practice, good practice for scholarly type writing or professional writing to be able to create an abstract out of a report that you've done. So that's one of the skills that's here. Requirements is to do a 250 word abstract that provides an overall summary of the project. And if we go back to the rubric, you can see that's included there too. This was a piece where the abstract was not included and the cover sheet was not included. Chapters missed some of those sections. So I made sure that those were in there as part of this part 1 section of the rubric. So part 2, we talked about that. There's an evaluator subjective assessment piece that's 9 points that that when it comes down to those chapters, those projects that were so close and so good, and they were both, you know, how do we decide which one? Those points that are built in for the evaluator subjective assessment can make the difference. So if we go on to part 3, this is kind of how do I organize my report? What should it look like and what sections should it have? This tells you exactly how to write your report and what words to use and what titles. So if you follow this, you know, 1, introduction, A, introduction, B, mission and vision, C, SMART goals, and then part 2 is the description, A, project details. If you write it like that, it makes it easy for the evaluators to follow because they're using this rubric, which I'll scroll down, to say, okay, does it have an introduction section? Do they talk about an introduction, mission and vision, and SMART goals? Because I'm looking for those things. I want to see if they talked about that. Does their introduction provide a clear, concise overview of the project? What did you do? Tell me what your project's about, kind of a brief overview. Do you have mission and vision statements? What are those mission and vision statements that your chapter decided, what do we want to accomplish with this project? And then one of the requirements is to have at least 3 project goals that are written in SMART format. And if we go down to the bottom of let me see. Oh no, that's under. I'm going to go back to the guide for writing the professional project report. So this provides a little bit of a description about what SMART goals are. This is a piece that I noticed a lot of chapters maybe don't understand what SMART goals are, and they might miss points on that part. So when we're talking about SMART goals, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. And so it's 3 goals written in that format. And if that's something that's not familiar to you of what SMART format means, then you can do a quick Google search of SMART goals. It'll tell you how to write those in that. So 3 project goals written in that format. And then for the mission and vision statements, identify 2 separate mission and vision statements that clearly explain what you're doing with your project. Okay, let me go back to the rubric to make sure I'm not leaving out any details about that. Mission and vision provides at least 3 project goals. Okay. And I'm just making sure there aren't any questions in the chat. Okay, the next part of, I'm going to go back to the guide again. So we have the introduction section that kind of sets up what is it that we're trying to do with our project, what were our goals and our vision for this. Now, how did our project meet those goals and meet our vision for what we want to do? The project details is the who, what, when, where, why, and how. What was your project about, and who is your target audience? Who's your group or participants that you're trying to help? What's the problem? What are you doing to help fix that problem? So if it's something like we noticed that this group or a school and it serves pregnant teens, they need help with financial planning and nutrition education and how to do the laundry, you know, basic life skills. So we are going to design a project that helps fill those gaps and teach those skills to them. You would be describing that in the project details. So it lets the readers know what are you doing, what's the idea for your project. The next part is relationship to the national theme. So that theme, Our Light Shines Brighter Together, in Service and Leadership, how does your project exemplify that? How does your project make your chapter's members' light shine brighter together? Are you doing something that's related to service? Are you providing your FCS leadership skills and knowledge, or applying that to be able to make an impact in whatever your chosen population is in their lives? So describing how that relates to the national theme. I love reading that section. It's one of my favorites, but it's important. The next part of the guide is how did you pay for this project? Put it in a table form. That makes it easier to follow, and it helps you organize your information. Sometimes there aren't any costs related to that, which is completely fine. Just saying we didn't need any funds. But you can also say, you know, this required so many hours of time, or we got donations to pay for this. We didn't have to pay for it out of our chapter, but our chapter members spent so many hours, or those kinds of things for cost, funding, and resources. And let me go back to the rubric just to see what it says. Provides a table that clearly indicates cost of projects, sources of funding, additional resources, or provides a clear explanation if no costs are involved. So back to the guide, the interpretation is the next section. So you're saying, okay, how does this project relate to family and consumer sciences? The FCS body of knowledge is one section that maybe if you're specifically dietetics, the FCS body of knowledge might not be familiar to you. So I put a link to the AAFCS website that talks about the body of knowledge. So I am going to, actually, I'm going to just go, I have it pulled up on a different screen. Okay, so that should be the American Association of Family and Consumer Sciences website. And it's over here. So I'm looking this direction on my other screen now. But this website talks about the body of knowledge. So down at the bottom, there's an overview and explanation of the body of knowledge. And this describes what that is. And so if you're not sure how your chapter relates to the, or how your project relates to the body of knowledge, this document goes through and explains all of that. And so you can pick out the different components of the body of knowledge and say how your project applies to that. So I'm going to switch back again to my guide document. And the next is implementation of Phi U's purposes. If we, hold on, I should have stayed on my other screen. Okay, I'm going to click on this link. I'm going to attempt to click on this link. And go back to my other screen. Okay, so here we see the Phi U website, and if we come to the member information section, which is, if you want to just go to it from the landing page, the About Us is where you would go, and then down to member information. And that's this page here. The purposes are right here. So if we're thinking about the guide, it says, clearly discuss how Phi U's purposes are incorporated into your professional project. So recognize and promote academic excellence, enhance qualities of leadership by providing opportunities for service, and encourage lifelong learning and commitment to advance family and consumer sciences and related areas. Describe how your project relates to those purposes. Okay, back to my other screen. All right, and then the next part under interpretation is utilization of members' knowledge and skills. So a lot of chapters are composed, the membership is varied. And if we talk about Idaho State University, it's primarily dietetic students, but we do have some FCS education majors as well. But in talking to chapters across the nation, I'm always, what disciplines are in your chapter? Because sometimes it can be more challenging to try to have a project that multiple disciplines can be represented. And so it's fun to see how, especially if it's one big project, how they make that happen for their chapters. So what disciplines are represented by your chapter? So tell us, are you merchandising, textiles? Are you dietetics? What's the background? Education, early childhood? Tell us who your chapter members are, and how did your project allow your chapter members to utilize their specific knowledge and skills? Going back to, not that one, the rubric. I just want to make sure as I'm talking about each of these sections that I mention the rubric. So clearly describes how the project allows members to utilize FCS knowledge and skills. Okay. The next section of the report is the evaluation. So if I go back to the guide, the evaluation section is next. Extent of member involvement. How many members in your chapter participated in the professional project? Calculate that percentage and tell us. But also, what did you do to encourage your members to participate? Was it a required activity? Did you, that seems to be pretty typical. Everyone needs to participate in order to get their points or to have a cords or stoles or something at the end of the semester. That seems pretty common, but describe what you did to encourage participation. This next section, actually the next two are also some of my favorite sections to read: member reflections and community impact. So a lot of chapters will include statements, just copy and paste quotations by members. What was their impression of the project? Did they learn anything? What did they enjoy most? You see a lot of, I enjoyed what type of community impact this had, and that was really meaningful for me. Or I learned new skills, or I learned about the other FCS disciplines in my chapter. My world is nutrition, and so it was cool to see a different area and kind of learn what they're all about too. The community impact piece, describe the impact your professional project had on individuals, families, and or the community you served. So sometimes we'll see thank you letters, or they'll ask participants to make comments, or if they did a survey or something as part of an evaluation, they would include part of that data. But that part's really fun to see as well. And that can be demonstrated in the supporting documentation too, as far as impact. Go back to the rubric. Yeah, that's the same thing. Provide, so if I'm looking at member reflections, provide several thoughtful reflections from members regarding their experiences completing the project. And community impact clearly describes the impact of the project had on the individuals, families, and or community served. I tried to use a lot of the same language on the rubric in the guide. So the last section of the report is the editorial aspects, and this is again more of an evaluation on the committee's part, but how well written was your report? Is it written in a professional style? Is it easy to understand, clear and concise? Is the language is appropriate for the anticipated audience? We have, it's a professional project, a professional report. That's the audience who's reading it as well. We have alumni and collegiate members who are reviewing this, professionals in the field of family and consumer sciences. So that would be, keep that in mind as your anticipated audience. And you can see the writing style if you go back to those 4 examples that are posted on the website. That's one thing that's helpful to see what level of professionalism that wins the awards. So organization, the report is organized using the outline above. Major ideas can be identified and flow easily from one to the other. So if I'm using that rubric and going back through saying, okay, I'm gonna actually go to it right now. I'm trying to find extent of member involvement. Is that easy for me to identify? Yep, because they had the title, extent of member involvement, and then they clearly described their participation. The next section, member reflections, yep, that's one of the titles, and they did provide several thoughtful reflections. The next section, community impact, they clearly described the community impact. So that's what we're talking about with organization, that you followed the outline and that major ideas can be identified and flow easily from one to another. Okay, mechanics, back on the guide. The report is free of grammatical, punctuation, and spelling errors, and all information is properly cited or referenced if applicable. There aren't any guidelines as far as APA format or a specific format, but whichever one you choose, if applicable. I don't know if many chapters had references, but just make sure you're using the same format for all references. The specifications, this is one, then this is where it describes. The report is double-spaced, 12-point font, 1-inch margins, and it's saved as a single PDF file. So one PDF file that you're going to email to the national office. And then the title of the PDF file would have the chapter's name. So it would be Alpha Chi Professional Project, and you can say Alpha Chi's and whatever the title is. That's what a lot of people do, but that makes it easy for us to identify which chapter project it is. So when we're getting ready to review, like there's the Alpha Chi, I'm going to do that one. The total report does not exceed 20 pages, and the file size does not exceed 3 megabytes. So that piece is probably with your supporting documentation and pictures, images of what size you put them in. So the page count of 20 pages does not include the cover sheet or title page, which we talked about. And then supporting documentation, there's some kind of descriptive news clippings, photographs, sketches, actual examples, or other materials to help the reader understand. So you're providing a written explanation, but that visual piece too for us visual learners out there, myself included, doing things like tables or images, and it helps kind of complete the picture, and it's fun to see also. So once you have your report written, organized, you feel like it matches the rubric and that you could have a score of 3 in every section, you are going to save everything as one PDF file like we talked about, name it in the way that is specified, and then you're going to email it. Here's the email address for the national office by 11:59 p.m. That should say p.m. Eastern Standard Time on April 1st. I'm going to go back to the rubric just to show this last page as kind of additional resources that are there. It helps to have things in multiple places. So this just tells you, again, if you're using the rubric, make sure you're also referring to the guide for writing the professional project report. Here's where to find it. There's the password again. It's under the Collegiate Chapter Officers Login section of the website in the Vice President's Resources. There's another reminder again. The cover sheet is not included in the total page count. You can find the cover sheet in the fall packet. Again, here's where to find it, the password. The title page is not included. Make sure you look at this report specifications section to know more about the title page. Here's a reminder about the theme, and then here's a link again to the body of knowledge if you need to know more information about that. So if I go back to first my notes to make sure I didn't leave anything out. I want to ask at this point if there are any questions about the professional project, creating the report, submitting the report, designing a professional project. Any kinds of questions to that is after this. I'm going to move on to just point out a few other helpful resources or guidelines, noteworthy notables from the website. So if there are any questions, feel free, if you remember them later, like, oh, I should have asked about that, interrupt, but I'm not hearing anything at the moment, so I am going to go back to the website. And I know I'm still on the rubric. Okay. So one reminder is, oh, I'll point out this one right here. Order honor cords and stoles March 1st. And just if you can't, I'm on the website on my screen, but if you can't see it, please feel free to interrupt me. So order honor cords and stoles by March 1st. That's the deadline coming up, so that we have time. I say we, but I'm including myself in the Melissa party, the national office, that they have time to get those to you by the end of the semester graduation. And there can be kind of a high traffic time for those orders. So March 1st is the deadline. It's okay if you need to order them past then. That has happened before, but we appreciate requests before March 1st. So that reminder's there. If we go to chapter reports is one of the things I want to highlight. We have 3 different chapter reports that are due, and I also want to point out a 4th one The chapter initiation reports is one that's not any specific deadline, but it's kind of a rolling deadline. And anytime you have an initiation for new members, we just had one here at Idaho State last week. There is a form to fill out, and then you can submit those dues that were collected. But if we go under the treasurer's resources, under forms, we see the chapter initiation report. So that's one thing that sometimes chapters have questions about where to find that, because the treasurer collects the funds. They also can submit that report, which is an e-form.
Yeah, and Jennifer, just as a reminder, we now have the option to pay with a credit card on that chapter initiation report. So definitely not a requirement, but an option.
Which is requested a lot. Thank you, Melissa. And again, anything else, please interrupt me and interject, because I know this is your expertise.
No, you're doing great.
So that's one thing. Please make sure, you know, as soon as you can after, I think it says within a week or something, to send that initiation report and the dues as soon as possible. So sometimes chapters forget, and that's okay too, but that I just wanted to make sure to remind everybody. So that's one report. The other three reports are the annual reports that are submitted every year at the end of the year. We do have the annual report that's submitted at the beginning of the year. It's okay to do that at any time too. We have a deadline in the earlier in this active status confirmation is the one I'm talking about. It's October. If you haven't done that, we'll still accept those anytime. It's an e-form, but it kind of tells us who are your chapter officers to contact throughout the semester. Because as we send out communication and information, it helps us know who to send that to. So that's the beginning of the year. But if we're looking at, now we're coming up toward the end of the semester, we have three kind of end of the year reports that need to be submitted through collegiate chapters. So one of those is the president's annual report. All three of those are due May 15th. So here's where you would find the president's annual report form. The next one would be for the public relation chair, publicity chair annual report, also due May 15th. And then the treasurer has the annual treasurer's report. So all of those are under the form sections for each of the respective positions: president, public relations, and treasurer. So again, those three reports due May 15th. Another May deadlines was one of the ones I talked about earlier. Under Vice President's resources, main resources, this call for undergraduate student research papers. So this is, just click on that to go to it. So this is a presentation that will happen if, let me go back. The undergraduate research paper that's chosen, that receives the award, they get to go to the American Association of Family and Consumer Sciences meeting. And this is in Baltimore, coming up June 26th through 28th. So they get to present their research and describe that. The award helps support travel to get them there. But we want to hear what is happening in the world of family consumer sciences undergraduate research. This is a collaboration between Kappa Omicron Nu and Phi U. And so we review those submissions from both organizations to award that. So May 1st is the deadline. And the link again to find out more about that is on the website there. So I wanted to point out that the other May 1st deadline is the Community Impact Grant. So if we go up here to Alumni and Awards, we'll see the Community Impact Grant. And I want to point this out because graduating seniors are eligible to apply for this Alumni Award. So that we got a few questions about that last year. You will soon be an alumni member, but that application's due May 1st. And this is a grant that's designed to recognize and support programs. It's kind of like a professional project for alumni chapters. But if you're doing something, a project in your community or with your alumni chapter that may need some help to pay for resources or other funds, that's what this is designed for. So there's a link to the description, the guidelines, how to submit that in this Community Impact Grant section of the website. Make sure I'm seeing all of my notes here. The last reminder, again, April 1st is the deadline for professional projects. Did anyone have any questions about professional projects? Or Melissa, is there anything else you would like to share that I left out as far as things to mention or? Make sure.
No, I can't really think. You've covered a lot of ground. Thank you for sharing those reminders. I don't really have anything else that's coming to mind at this moment.
Okay. Well, I will send this recording to Melissa to post and make available on the website. Is that going to be under the login section, Melissa? Like the
yeah, I think that's appropriate. That's where we put the scholarship, fellowship, and awards webinar. So I think we can certainly put that there and maybe even put something out on social media. So there's a little plug. If you're not following Phi U on social media, definitely do that because we post a lot of information and reminders there as well.
And the professional project winners. Okay. Well, thank you again for joining us, and please feel free to contact me anytime. My email address is on that tips from the president-elect. It's also on the website, and I'm happy to answer questions anytime. So enjoy your Friday and almost spring, and have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Bye.